Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. This is where we, take those really complex source materials and try to break them down, give you the clearest possible understanding.
You get informed fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today, wow, we are stepping into some seriously deep water. We're talking philosophy, cosmology, law.
Hmm.
It's all in there.
It really is.
We're tackling a question that, honestly, it can feel like a real paradox. If you have a creator who is perfectly just, totally righteous, all-powerful, why on earth would that creator allow temporary, unlawful rule? Specifically, the kind of rule the sources attribute to Satan. Why let that happen, even for a short time? It just seems to fly in the face of divine power and justice.
It absolutely does. On the surface, it's probably one of the biggest intellectual hurdles you encounter when studying these kinds of systems of justice, creation, sovereignty.
Right.
And the source material we're digging into today, it doesn't just shrug it off. It doesn't give a simple answer. Instead, it lays out this incredibly detailed legal and, well, structural framework. Yeah, these sources argue that this allowance, this delay, it isn't some divine oversight or contradiction. No, it's presented as a necessary, almost strategic phase, part of a much bigger plan.
A bigger plan for what, exactly?
For universal completion, for achieving ultimate, undeniable justice. So our mission today, for you listening, is to get past that initial, wait, what? Feeling.
Yeah, the confusion.
Exactly. And to really unpack the logic, the architecture behind why this delay is supposedly required.
And these sources we're using, they're pretty unique, aren't they? They're not just telling a story.
Not at all. It's more like they're weaving together narrative, yes, but also intricate law, the structure of creation itself, and prophecies about ultimate destiny. It's a synthesis.
And there's a heavy focus on key figures, right? The Son, someone called the first Adam.
Absolutely. And the overarching goal seems to be about completing the free will of every created being, making sure that choice is real, tested, and final.
Okay, so it's like a legal explanation more than a story.
Yeah. You could definitely see it that way. Almost like a legal brief explaining why judgment couldn't be immediate, why this pause was mandatory before the final, let's say, execution of cosmic justice.
And understanding the terms is key, you mentioned.
Crucial. If you grasp what the sources mean by the first Adam, the original steward, basically, and the commandment, which is like the foundational law of creation, and this concept of deputy rule, or as this source puts it.
That's the temporary authority given to Adam.
Exactly. Once you have those terms down, the whole scope of this complex argument starts to become much, much clearer. It's intricate, but there's a definite logic to it.
All right. Before we dive headfirst into the really deep stuff, maybe we should just quickly list those 7 pillars. The core reasons the source gives for this temporary allowance, just so everyone has the roadmap.
Good idea. Lay them out.
Okay, so the source gives 7 main justifications. 1, proof of the commandment. 2, exposing the culmination of evil. 3, demonstration of laws. 4, proof of justice. 5, securing the son's inheritance. 6, salvation of Adam. And finally, 7, completion of creation.
That's the framework. 7 interconnected reasons.
Right. So let's start unpacking. Where do we begin? The foundation seems to be the necessity of the delay itself.
Yes, we absolutely have to start there. With the immediate crisis the Creator faced right after the first Adam's fall, his transgression, the sources are very, very specific on this.
What was the crisis?
The crisis was that immediate, forceful judgment, just wiping Satan off the map instantly, would have actually been, well, cosmologically destructive.
Destructive. How? Wouldn't quick justice show strength? Result?
It would show power, yes.
Yeah.
Raw power. But the argument here is incredibly sophisticated. It wouldn't necessarily prove love demonstrated through justice.
Okay, I'm following.
See, if the Creator had just, boom, annihilated Satan right after Adam messed up, Satan could have, according to these sources, launched a very compelling accusation across the cosmos. A false one, yes, but compelling nonetheless.
What accusation could he possibly make at that point? He just caused the fall.
The accusation would be this: that the Creator's love wasn't real, or at least it was flawed, incomplete. And maybe more damagingly, that the commandment itself, the rule given for creation, was either impossible for creatures to follow, or it was just an arbitrary restriction, a way to control things.
Okay, so it's about perception, about proof.
Exactly. If the Creator just used overwhelming force to crush the rebellion instantly, think about the other beings watching. The untainted angels, the ones who hadn't fallen.
What would they see?
They'd see judgment served purely through power. Might makes right, and that could sow doubt. Their loyalty might shift from being based on love and understanding to being based purely on fear.
So they'd obey, but out of fear of punishment, not because they truly believe the Creator is righteous and the law is good.
Precisely. The sources are clear. Service born out of fear, linked only to the threat of punishment, it demonstrates an incomplete understanding of love. For the universe to function in genuine, eternal harmony, the love and loyalty of all created beings have to be based on proven knowledge.
Proven knowledge, meaning?
Meaning they have to witness the justice, see the love demonstrated, and understand for themselves the absolute necessity of the commandment. It has to be shown, not just forced upon them.
So the whole delay, this allowance of temporary chaos, is fundamentally about establishing that absolute, undeniable moral and legal proof for everyone.
That's the core argument. It sets the stage perfectly for the first pillar.
Reason 1, proving the commandment. Okay, so the time allows for proof. How does the Son fit into proving this commandment?
Well, the commandment, as it's defined here, isn't just a list of do's and don'ts. It's more like the structural blueprint for how the created realm is supposed to function.
The operating system, maybe.
Good analogy. And Satan's core claim was this system is flawed, or creatures can't actually run this program successfully.
Right.
So the Son enters the picture by humbling himself, taking on the form of a creature, becoming the last Adam, as the sources call him. He lived within time and space, under the same conditions, and he perfectly fulfilled the commandment.
He lived it out, became the living proof.
Exactly. He became the ultimate test case. His entire life, especially facing intense opposition and temptation, served as a demonstration. It showed the commandment wasn't just theoretically true, but practically viable, possible.
But it wasn't just for himself, right? You mentioned witnesses.
Crucial point. The sources really emphasize this. The Son didn't just keep the law perfectly for his own sake. By obeying completely, even to the point of death, he became the faithful witness, the first one.
The first and perfect one.
Yeah.
And by doing so, he legally opened the way. He created a pathway for others, these witnesses or first fruits, mentioned to follow his example.
So their obedience confirms his proof. It provides universal confirmation. It's like he sets the precedent, proves it can be done, and then others follow, demonstrating that, yes, this law, this commandment, is not only necessary for creation, but entirely possible to keep, even when everything seems chaotic under unlawful rule. The truth shifts from just being asserted to being historically, verifiably demonstrated.
Okay, that makes sense. If reason 1, prove the law can be kept, then reason 2 must be about showing what happens when it's not kept. Let's move to reason 2. Exposing the culmination of evil. I think most people assume the fall of Adam was the worst point, the peak of evil. But these sources argue something different.
They do. They argue that time was actually needed to allow Satan's sin, his rebellion, to reach its absolute, most extreme expression, its full maturity, you could say.
And what is that absolute peak of evil, according to this framework?
The killing of the Son.
Ah.
The sources draw a really profound line here, often using the parable of the vineyard. You know the one. The owner sends servants to collect the fruit.
And the tenants beat some, kill others.
Yeah, right. The owner is the creator. The servants are the prophets sent throughout history, killing them. That was already a terrible sin by the rebellious tenants, representing Satan and his followers. Huge transgression.
But killing the Son
Was magnitudes worse. The sources are insistent. No previous sin, not even murdering all the prophets who came before, can compare to the act of killing the Son.
Why? Because of who he is.
Exactly. Because he is identified not just as another servant, but as the rightful heir, the original owner, the creator of the vineyard itself. This act, this specific act, becomes the final, undeniable exposure of Satan's true motive and intent.
It shows his hand completely.
Completely. It demonstrates definitively to the entire cosmos, all the angels, fallen Adam, everyone, that Satan's rebellion isn't about seeking some kind of alternative freedom or justice. It's about seizing ownership, naked ambition.
So killing the heir proves he'd even kill the owner if he could.
That's the implication. If he had the power, he wouldn't hesitate to kill the creator himself to take control. This sort of ultimate act of rebellion, the spectacle of boundless evil, is presented as necessary. Necessary for all created beings to fully, truly understand the nature and the cost of sin. The consequences of rejecting the Creator's way had to be seen in their most horrific form.
Wow, okay. That provides a pretty grim but necessary foundation for the next two reasons, which you said are linked, reason 3 and 4. demonstrating love and justice. 300,
Right. It still feels a bit paradoxical, though. How does allowing all this chaos and suffering manage to demonstrate both love and justice?
Yeah, the paradox is real until you look closely at how the sources frame the purpose of the chaos. Let's take love first, reason 3. The primary demonstration of love isn't preventing the suffering caused by the fall. Instead, it's shown through the Son's incarnation and sacrifice during this period of allowed chaos.
So think about it. Instead of just hitting the reset button or instantly judging, the Creator sends the ultimate expression of his own being, his love, the Son, into the mess. The Son experiences the suffering, lives under the broken system, and ultimately conquers the very consequences of rejecting the commandment.
So love is shown by entering into the brokenness to provide a way out, not by simply stopping the brokenness from the outside.
That's a very good way to put it, yes. Now, for justice, reason 4. The delay, the temporary permission for unlawful rule, serves to prove that the commandment wasn't arbitrary or unfair in the first place. Remember Satan's claim, the law is bad, it's restrictive, it harms creation.
Right.
The current state of the world, operating without the commandment's effective rule, under Satan's influence, becomes the ultimate counter-evidence. Exhibit A, if you will.
Can you elaborate on how the sources describe this world? You mentioned Hades earlier.
Yes. The sources use terms like the oppressed vineyard, or Hades, and the description is one of systemic chaos. It's a realm governed by survival of the fittest, by mutual destruction, by fear. The original creation, when Adam administered it under the commandment, is portrayed as harmonious. This current world full of violence, creatures harming each other, injustice, suffering this, is presented as the direct, unavoidable result of rejecting the Creator's foundational law.
So the suffering isn't random, it's the consequence.
It's the consequence and therefore the proof. It proves that the commandment is essential. Its absence leads to self-destruction. Therefore, the law itself is ultimately an expression of love and justice because it's the only path to life and harmony.
So the world becomes this huge, observable experiment, a tragic one, but one that demonstrates for all time why the Creator's way is the only way that works. The suffering proves the law is just and loving.
That's the core logic presented, a necessary, albeit painful, demonstration for the entire cosmos, which leads us directly into the next, very crucial legal point involving the Son. Reason 5. Securing the Son's inheritance. This one feels a bit tricky too. Why does the Son need to secure an inheritance? Didn't he create everything? Isn't it already his?
Yeah, that does seem redundant. If he made it all, thrones, dominions, you name it, isn't he the owner by default?
Cosmologically, yes. Absolutely. He's the original owner, the source.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the legal framework within time and creation, especially after the disruption caused by the fall. Within that specific context, a formal process, a reacquisition, was apparently needed to settle the dispute and establish his right definitively.
The legal process.
Yes. The sources state very clearly that the Son received his ultimate authority, the name above every name, the right to inherit the cosmos, because he submitted himself to the rules of the created realm, the very rules he established.
So he didn't just claim it based on his original status. He actually earned it by playing by the rules of the game. He set up, even after it was broken.
Exactly that. He came as a creature, the last Adam, and perfectly fulfilled the requirements of the commandment where the first Adam failed. And crucially, by demonstrating perfect obedience all the way to submitting to the ultimate consequence of the fall, which is death on a cross. He satisfied every single legal and moral requirement within that system.
So his death wasn't just a sacrifice, it was a legal transaction.
It was the linchpin of the legal transaction, yes. That act of perfect, willing, sacrificial obedience is what officially secured the created realm as his inheritance. It transformed his inherent cosmic ownership into a legally validated, earned inheritance recognized within the temporal created order. This formal step is presented as absolutely essential for him to be able justly execute the final judgment on Satan later.
That's a mind-bending level of legal precision. Okay, so that connects the Son's actions to the universal picture. Now let's bring it back to the first Adam, the original steward. Reasons 6 and 7. Salvation of Adam, 16 Urian, and completion of creation, 7 Aya. This feels like the heart of the why behind the delay, the ultimate sort of humanitarian purpose. Why does Adam need this period of unlawful rule to continue for his salvation?
This is where it all comes together, really. And it highlights the core dilemma that the delay is designed to solve. First, you have to understand Adam's status after the fall. The sources are blunt. Anyone who sins becomes a slave of sin.
A slave. That's strong language.
It's a legal designation in this framework. Adam was conquered by sin through Satan's deception. Therefore, legally, he became subject to the authority of sin's master, Satan.
So Adam is now legally bound to Satan's fate.
Under the strict application of law and justice, yes. If the Creator had judged Satan instantly, justice would demand that Adam, as the slave, be judged right alongside his master, which means
Thrown into the eternal fire, as the source material puts it.
exactly. So the Creator's love, seeking a way to save Adam, had to find a mechanism that could satisfy justice but still offer redemption.
And that mechanism is the temporary rule.
The temporary unlawful rule is permitted specifically to create that critical window of opportunity. This period is the only time when the first Adam, meaning those humans descended from him who choose to follow the Son, can actively conquer sin within themselves, escape that legal slavery, and demonstrate their allegiance to the Son.
And they have to do this while Satan is still active.
Yes, while the temptation is real, while the unlawful pressure exists, this is the only environment in which Adam can truly re-emerge from that state of slavery and actively prove that his free will is now aligned with the Creator through obedience to the Son.
Why couldn't Adam just be, say, pardoned after Satan is judged and gone? Why does the proof have to happen during the conflict?
Because the goal isn't just pardon, it's the completion of free will. Free will, in this context, requires a genuine choice made against genuine opposition. If Satan is removed first, the opportunity for Adam to exercise his will by overcoming sin, by winning that battle, is gone. The choice wouldn't be truly tested or proven.
So he'd still be legally tainted.
He would remain legally associated with his initial failure in slavery, leaving a kind of flaw and incompleteness in the fabric of the restored creation. His free will wouldn't be perfected through victory.
Wow, okay. So the delay is this intricate mechanism of grace woven into justice. It gives the first Adam the chance to legally break free from the chains of slavery before the final judgment falls on his former master. The whole sequence is designed for redemption without compromising the universal standard of justice.
And that directly fulfills the final reason, reason 7, completion of creation. The ultimate aim is to perfect the free will of every creature and to completely, permanently remove sin from the created realm, but not by force. It has to be through proven, tested, victorious submission to the Son. That's presented as the only pathway to an eternal, harmonious, and truly free existence.
Okay, we've laid out those 7 core reasons why the delay was necessary: preventing injustice, proving the law, saving Adam. Now let's dig deeper into the mechanics of this temporary rule itself in Section 2. You mentioned Adam becoming a slave of sin. Let's unpack that concept a bit more.
Right, the slave of sin in the source text is absolutely fundamental here.
Yeah.
The legal principle behind it is starkly simple. Whoever conquers you owns you, or rather, whoever you submit to, you become enslaved by.
So Adam submitted to Satan's deception, sinned, and therefore was legally conquered.
Correct. Satan became his master through that act of disobedience. And this isn't just seen as a moral lapse, it's a fundamental shift in legal standing. Adam becomes subject to the judgment that awaits his new master, Satan. It's a harsh but apparently necessary legal reality in this system.
Which reinforces why the temporary rule is needed. It's the Creator essentially finding a way for the slave to escape the master's judgment without violating the law. But this means the Creator has to consciously permit evil to continue for a time. Does this imply Satan has genuine independence during this period? Is he off the leash, so to speak?
That's a critical point the sources are careful to clarify. The answer is no. Satan is not operating outside the Creator's ultimate control. Authority was, in a sense, granted. Permission was given for him to exist, to make his case, to level his false accusations, but that permission comes with strict limits.
Limits? How so?
The Creator retains absolute sovereignty over everything, heavenly realms, earthly realms, all of it. Satan's power is derivative and permitted, not inherent or absolute.
Can you give us a clearer picture of how this limited authority works? Is there an analogy?
The idea of a walled garden sometimes helps. Satan is allowed to operate, yes. He can test, tempt, and demonstrate the disastrous results of life without the commandment. But he can only do so within the boundaries, the walls that the Creator has set.
So he needs permission for certain things.
The sources suggest so. There are references, like the story of Job, for instance, which implies Satan can't just act arbitrarily. He seems to need specific permission to affect individuals or events beyond a certain scope. He's constrained. He cannot fundamentally derail the Creator's ultimate plan, even while trying to disprove it.
So paradoxically, the Creator is using Satan's own limited, permitted actions to achieve the bigger goals of proving righteousness and offering redemption.
That's exactly how it's framed. Satan is almost like a temporary, unwilling legal instrument, bound by rules he perhaps doesn't fully grasp. His efforts to prove his case, his false accusations, inevitably end up backfiring and demonstrating the Creator's justice and the necessity of the commandment. This ensures that when Judgment Day finally arrives, Satan has absolutely no legitimate legal ground to stand on. His own actions will have condemned him within the allowed framework.
Okay, that clarifies the limited nature of his power. Now, let's talk about the effect of this temporary unlawful rule on the world itself, what the sources call the vineyard, or Hades. What kind of suffering is specifically linked to Satan's influence during this time?
The sources describe it as a total oppression, leading to systemic chaos. Remember, when Adam lost his delegated authority by becoming a slave of sin, the commandment was essentially put on hold as the governing law of the earth.
The operating system crashed.
In effect, yes. And this immediately plunged the created realm into disorder. The governing principle shifted, according to these texts, to survival of the fittest, to mutual destruction, violence, and fear. Things that were impossible under Adam's original harmonious rule guided by the commandment.
So things like predation, violence between creatures, natural disasters maybe. These are all symptoms of the commandment being inactive.
The sources strongly imply that the fundamental disharmony, the violence where creatures kill and consume one another, the pervasive suffering in the natural world, this is a direct result of the broken stewardship and the influence of the unlawful ruler. It wasn't part of the original design under the commandment.
So every bit of chaos, every act of violence we see, serves as ongoing, tangible evidence that the Creator's law is essential for peace and order.
It's presented as the global symptom of the rejected law, yes. This suffering, this systemic dysfunction, is what the texts mean when they speak of all creation groans. It's groaning under this unlawful management, waiting.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for the sons of God to emerge, those individuals who, by following the Son, prove the commandment is possible to live by even in a fallen world. Their appearance signifies the nearing end of the unlawful rule and paves the way for the Son's return to execute judgment and bring true rest and restoration. The suffering itself becomes a necessary part of the demonstration required for free will to be fully completed and understood.
Okay, let's loop back to Adam's crucial choice. We established this period is his only chance to break free by conquering Satan's influence. How exactly does this temporary, chaotic rule facilitate that specific opportunity for Adam?
It provides the necessary context for a meaningful, victorious choice. Because Adam became a slave, his redemption can't just be a passive acceptance of a pardon. It has to involve active participation, a demonstration of allegiance.
He has to fight his way out, metaphorically.
In a sense, yes. He must be given the chance. While the temptation and influence of his master, Satan, are still potent realities, to actively choose the Son's path. That path is defined by perfect obedience, even sacrificial obedience. By making that choice consistently, he overcomes the sin that enslaved him and breaks the legal tie to Satan.
And if Satan were already gone, judged and removed,
then the choice wouldn't carry the same weight. It wouldn't be a victory won against opposition. It might feel more like simply choosing the only option left. The core objective, remember, is the completion of free will.
And completion requires testing against a real alternative.
Exactly. A free choice made without a genuine possibility of choosing wrongly, or without facing down the source of the initial failure, is arguably an incomplete choice. So this temporary rule provides the essential environment, the battleground where Adam can choose the Son's obedience over Satan's temptation and power. This allows him to definitively conquer the source of his slavery.
And crucially, this active victory is what allows him to legally avoid the judgment, the eternal fire that's ultimately destined for Satan.
Precisely. This window of opportunity, this period of allowed temporary rule, becomes the ultimate expression of the Creator's mercy operating within the strict framework of his own justice. It's the path provided for the slave to not only be freed, but to become a victorious son.
All right, to really get the impact of this unlawful rule, we need a clear picture of the lawful rule it displaced. Section 3 takes us back to the beginning, to the original setup. What exactly did the Creator establish initially, and what was the first Adam's specific job?
Okay, back to Genesis, essentially, but interpreted through this legal lens. The Creator sets up the whole created realm, the garden, Eden, all of it. And he entrusts the first Adam with a very specific function, deputy rule. That term, Chiger, is key.
Deputy rule, meaning he wasn't the ultimate owner, but a representative.
Exactly. Adam was the creator steward, his agent on earth. His mandate was clear. Administer the creation, guard it, cultivate it, make sure it produced the fruit the Creator intended, righteousness, harmony, all guided by the framework of the commandment.
And was this deputy rule meant to be permanent?
No, the sources are quite specific here. It was always intended to be temporary. It was entrusted to Adam only until the son, who is identified as the rightful heir and the original owner, arrived on the scene to take direct control.
So Adam was basically keeping the seat warm for the son.
That's one way to look at it. And there's another crucial detail about this original authority: how it was administered. The sources say it was given via an angel. Adam received the commandment and his instructions through an intermediary, not directly from the son at that initial stage.
Why is that mediation important?
It points to the nature of that original authority. It was perhaps less direct, maybe more vulnerable than what comes later. It highlights that Adam's position, while significant, was preparatory.
Okay, so a temporary mediated conditional stewardship.
Hmm.
Then comes the fall. Adam is misled, sins, becomes a slave of sin, and the authority is compromised. It's lost. But you mentioned earlier there's a bit of scholarly debate within the source material about exactly how this authority transferred or didn't transfer to Satan.
Yes, and this shows the level of detailed legal thinking involved. It's not presented as a simple narrative. There are nuances, and the sources acknowledge at least two main perspectives on what happened to that deputy rule.
Okay, what's the first view? View A, direct theft.
This view argues that Satan, by tricking and conquering Adam, effectively stole that specific temporary deputy rule directly from him, like snatching the keys to the kingdom. Under this interpretation, Satan then actively wielded that same authority unlawfully to oppress the earth.
All right. And the alternative, view B, indirect control.
This second view is a bit more nuanced. It suggests that Satan didn't necessarily steal the title or the office of deputy rule itself. Instead, he achieved domination by gaining control over the person holding the office, the fallen first Adam.
So Adam technically still held the position, but was forced to use it for Satan's purposes because he was enslaved, like a puppet ruler.
Exactly. Adam nominally possessed the temporary authority, but because he was a slave to sin, Satan, his master, directed how that authority was exercised. The control was indirect, working through the enslaved steward.
That's a fascinating distinction.
Yeah.
Does it ultimately matter which view is correct? Does it change the outcome?
Interestingly, while the sources explore this distinction, they also seem to suggest that, in the grand scheme, the mechanism isn't the most critical point.
Why not?
Because whether Satan stole the authority directly, view A, or controlled it indirectly through the enslaved Adam, view B, the fundamental reality remains unchanged. The ultimate ownership, the absolute sovereignty, always remained with the Creator. Satan's claim, however he exercised his influence, was illegitimate against the true owner.
So his power was never truly his own, regardless of how he got his hands on the temporary levers of control.
Precisely. The source material emphasizes that Satan's power is always subordinate, always permitted within the Creator's overarching plan. Whether he picked the lock or forced the gatekeeper to open it, the house never stopped belonging to the original owner. This reinforces the idea that the suffering wasn't because the Creator lost control, but because he was allowing the consequences of lawlessness to unfold for those specific higher purposes we discussed: proof, redemption, completion.
Okay, that makes sense. Keeps the focus on the Creator's sovereignty. Now, what about the end of this whole arrangement, this temporary deputy rule, whether held by Adam, stolen by Satan, or controlled indirectly? When does it officially legally expire?
The sources are absolutely clear and unanimous on this point. The temporary rule becomes null and void the instant the son arrives on the scene.
The moment the heir shows up.
Immediately. The deputy rule granted to the first Adam legally terminates upon the physical arrival and presence of the son, the rightful heir, the original owner. Delegated authority simply cannot stand, has no legal basis, once the true administrator is present.
And we see this friction during the son's life, right? If the authority legally ended when he arrived, what should Satan have done, according to the law?
Legally, he should have immediately submitted, relinquished all control, yielded the administration of the earth back to the son.
But he didn't.
He absolutely did not. The sources highlight this refusal as his fundamental act of continued open rebellion against the present heir. He acted illegally by continuing to occupy the vineyard, rule violently, and resist the son.
Is the temptation in the wilderness related to this? When Satan offers the son the kingdoms of the world.
That's often interpreted as precisely that. Satan's essentially trying to bargain with the authority he unlawfully usurped or controlled. He's trying to legitimize his illegitimate claim by offering it to the Son, perhaps hoping the Son will accept it from him, thereby validating his possession.
And the son refused,
Right.
basically saying, it's already mine and your time is up anyway.
Correct. The Son didn't need the offer because he's the original owner, and Satan's temporary permitted stewardship or control of it had legally expired upon his arrival. Satan's continued violent occupation after that point is directly parallel to the parable of the wicked tenants in the vineyard. They see the heir coming, and instead of yielding, they decide to kill him to try and keep the inheritance for themselves. So Satan's rule isn't just temporary. From the moment the Son arrives, it's actively, demonstrably illegal. Now, to really cement why the Son's arrival invalidates Satan's claim and why his actions are so pivotal, we need to fully grasp who the sources identify the Son as. His identity underpins the entire legal and cosmological framework here.
Okay, section 4. Let's start with the son as creator. What specific details do the sources give about his role in the very beginning?
They go deep. The Son isn't just involved in creation. He's presented as the active agent, the one through whom all things came into being. And all things means everything, not just the physical universe, the earth, but the entire invisible structure of reality, too.
Invisible structure. Like what?
The celestial hierarchies mentioned thrones, dominions, principalities, powers, all the unseen forces and authorities that structure the cosmos. The Son created them all. Furthermore, he's described as the perfect image, the exact representation of the Father. And, critically, he's the one who actively sustains the universe. His power holds everything together, moment by moment.
Wow. So he's not just the architect. He's the ongoing power source keeping reality running.
That's the picture painted. Without his sustaining word of power, existence itself would essentially collapse. So when he steps into the created realm, he's literally entering the house he built and is actively maintaining.
The sources also make a point about his eternal nature versus his taking on a created form.
Yes, and that distinction is vital for understanding the sacrifice and the obedience aspect. While the Son is presented as co-equal, co-eternal with the Father existing outside of time, infinite, he chose to humble himself, voluntarily,
To become human.
to take on the form of a creature, subject to the limitations of time and space that he himself created. This wasn't because he was lesser, it was a necessary step. It was required for him to perfectly demonstrate obedience from within the created system, fulfilling its laws, and becoming the perfect model for all other created beings.
And in doing that, by taking on that created form, he becomes the last Adam. What's the significance of that title? Legally, morally.
The title Last Adam signifies his role as the corrective counterpart to the first Adam. He came to succeed where the first one failed. And the absolute key difference, the Son was sinless.
That's the foundation.
It's everything. Because the first Adam fell into sin, he became subject to sin's power and its master, Satan. But the Son, having never sinned, never yielded to temptation, he was legally untouchable by Satan in that sense. Satan, as the ruler of this world through sin, had no legitimate claim, no legal hook, no power over the Son.
So Satan could tempt him, attack him, but couldn't legally claim him like he claimed the first Adam.
Exactly. The battleground shifts entirely. It's not about avoiding falling into sin for the first time. It's about maintaining perfect obedience, even under duress, even unto death. Which brings us to how he achieved victory. Victory through obedience. How did being sinless allow him to actually defeat sin and Satan and secure that inheritance we talked about?
Right. How does obedience translate into cosmic victory?
His victory wasn't won through raw power, but through perfect submission to the Father's will, which culminated in his death on the cross. Now, remember the legal framework. The first Adam's sin led to the loss of rule and the penalty of death. For the Son to justly reclaim that rule and overcome the penalty, he had to enter the system, live perfectly under its law, the commandment, and then willingly take on the consequence of the broken law, death, without having earned it himself.
Because he was sinless, death had no legal claim on him.
Precisely. His death was not a penalty he owed. It was a voluntary act of substitutionary obedience. By submitting to it, he fulfilled the law's ultimate demand on behalf of the fallen. And because death couldn't hold him, since he was sinless, his resurrection becomes the proof of his victory over sin and death.
So the cross wasn't just a tragic execution. It was, what? A legal declaration, a cosmic event.
It was presented as the ultimate legal and cosmological transaction. Through that act of perfect obedience culminating in death and resurrection, the sources say the Son disarmed or made a public spectacle of the principalities and powers. He essentially canceled their legal claims based on sin.
How do you do that?
By fulfilling the righteous requirement of the law perfectly and paying the penalty he didn't owe, this act legally secured the inheritance of the entire created realm for him. It wasn't just his by right of creation anymore, it was now his by right of redemption and conquest through obedience. This is why, the texts argue, he received the name above every name. It confirmed his status as the ultimate rightful heir, earned through perfect submission within the very system he came to save.
Okay. Suddenly, the whole delay, the suffering, the intricate plan, it doesn't look like an accident or a compromise. It looks like a necessary, albeit complex, legal process to fix the system from within, justly and terminally.
That's exactly the argument. It's presented as the only way to resolve the first Adam's failure, secure the inheritance for the rightful heir, and expose the true nature of evil all simultaneously while upholding both justice and love. The whole structure hinges on this victory being achieved through perfect obedience, not just brute force. So, the Son's work is complete. He's arrived, lived perfectly, obeyed sacrificially, died, and risen again. This whole complex series of actions achieves two very specific, crucial outcomes. These outcomes tie everything together and satisfy the demands of justice and love that were laid out by those 7 pillars we discussed earlier.
Okay, what's the first major outcome? It relates back to the first Adam, right?
Yeah.
Yes. The Son's perfect obedience and sacrifice provide the necessary legal foundation, the justification, to save the first Adam from judgment. And when we say first Adam here, we mean specifically those individuals who have repented during that window of opportunity, who have embraced the Son's work, been reborn, and thus escaped the legal status of being a slave of sin.
They get freed from the consequence that should have fallen on them because of their connection to the original fall and Satan.
Exactly. Justice was satisfied through the Son's actions, allowing mercy to be extended to the repentant.
And the second outcome, the flip side of that.
The second outcome is the final just resolution regarding the source of the rebellion. The Son now has the absolute legal right to judge only Satan and those who definitively align with him. Satan refused to repent, refused to submit to the rightful heir when he arrived, so justice is fully served against the unrepentant originator of the problem.
While simultaneously upholding the Creator's love by saving those who turned back, it completes the picture.
It completes the picture, ensuring free will is honored, justice is served, and love finds a way.
Okay, so now let's focus on the ultimate reward, the payoff for those individuals, the redeemed first Adam, who successfully navigated that window of opportunity and escaped slavery. The sources talk about a restoration of the deputy rule, but it's different this time. Better.
Much better. Fundamentally different, in fact. This is where you see the ultimate purpose of the whole long, complex process. The redeemed first Adam doesn't just get the old job back. They receive authority in a completely new capacity. They receive it as adopted son's turn, is the term used.
Adopted sons. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means they are no longer just temporary stewards waiting for the real heir. Through their connection to the Son and their proven victory over sin, they are elevated. They are now considered, in a sense, the complete image of the Creator themselves, reflecting the Son's nature. And this new status has a crucial implication regarding the authority they receive. Because they are now perfected, adopted sons, confirmed in their free will, they cannot fall or lose the authority again. It's permanent, secure.
Okay, we absolutely need to break down the difference between the old authority and this new one. This seems like the core justification for the entire delay.
It really is. Let's contrast them.
First, the original authority before the fall. What were its key characteristics again?
It was fundamentally imperfect and conditional. It was vulnerable. The proof is that the first Adam could sin and did sin and consequently lost it. Plus, remember, it was mediated. It came via an angel, suggesting a certain distance and incompleteness in the relationship with the Creator and the Son at that stage.
Okay. Imperfect, conditional, mediated, losable. Now contrast that with the restored authority after adoption.
This new authority is described as absolute and perfected. Why? Because it's granted only after the individual has been tested, proven victorious against sin, and fundamentally transformed into a complete image of the Creator through adoption by the Son. They've passed the test.
And how's it granted?
Critically, it's not mediated by an angel this time. It is granted directly by the Son himself, after he has officially and legally inherited all things through his own obedience. This direct connection signifies its permanence and its higher nature. It's certain, it's unbreakable, and it's shared with the heir.
So the redeemed don't just get their old job back, they get promoted to co-heirs, essentially.
That's the implication. This qualitative leap from a temporary, vulnerable steward to an eternal, perfected, adopted son sharing in the son's authority, this is the ultimate outcome. This is why the wait, the suffering, the whole intricate plan was necessary according to these sources. It achieves a higher, more secure state than the original creation.
It sounds less like a simple restoration and more like an elevation, a fundamental upgrade.
It's definitely framed as an upgrade that guarantees eternal security and harmony. Those who attain this status, the sources say, are the ones who participate in the first resurrection.
And they receive this perfected deputy rule.
They receive it and are said to rule under the sun for a specific period, often mentioned as 1,000 years. They become firstborn sons, reflecting the son's status, and they inherit the created realm through him, sharing in his victory and his reign. This is the ultimate fulfillment of reason 7. Creation is completed, free will is perfected and secured forever through tested obedience and adoption.
That's a powerful culmination. Now, one final piece of this, the climax of justice. The sources mention the redeemed first Adam playing an active role in the final judgment of Satan. What's the significance of that?
It's profoundly symbolic and legally significant. It provides the ultimate visible vindication of the whole process. The sources describe the scene when the son returns for the final judgment, and who is used in the process of subjugating Satan, placing him under the son's feet.
The redeemed first Adam, the former slaves.
Exactly. The very ones who were once conquered and enslaved by Satan are now participating in his final definitive defeat under the authority of the Son.
Talk about a reversal of roles.
It's the ultimate reversal. It serves multiple purposes. First, it definitively shows that the redeemed first Adam is saved, completely separated from the judgment falling on their former master. Second, it provides a powerful, undeniable witness to the entire cosmos.
Witness to what?
Witness that Satan's claims were utterly false from the beginning, that the Creator's commandment is just and good, that the Creator is righteous and loving, that the path of obedience through the Son leads not to subjugation, but to victory, perfection, and shared authority. It demonstrates the completion of free will and the total eradication of sin, achieved not by arbitrary power, but through justice, sacrifice, redemption, and the elevation of the formerly fallen steward. #AudiTRO.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. We started with that big question. Why would a perfect creator allow temporary, unlawful rule? And this deep dive, based on these sources, suggests the answer is incredibly complex, but has a definite internal logic.
It does.
The delay, the allowance of chaos, it wasn't weakness, wasn't hesitation. It was, according to this framework, a carefully planned, legally necessary strategy.
A strategy with multiple simultaneous objectives.
Right. It was the only way to secure perfect universal justice that could be seen as just by all creation. It was the way to prove the Creator's love, not by avoiding suffering, but through the Son's sacrifice within the suffering. And maybe most importantly, it was the mechanism to complete the free will of creation itself, to allow the fallen steward, Adam, the chance for genuine redemption and restoration through tested, victorious obedience.
And that testing, that entire period from the fall right through to the final judgment, becomes one massive, necessary cosmological demonstration. By allowing evil, specifically Satan's rebellion, to reach its absolute worst point, the murder of the heir of the Creator provided undeniable, irrefutable proof.
Proof for everyone, angels, humans, all created beings.
Proof for everyone, for all time, of just how catastrophic the consequences are when you reject the Creator's commandment, His way. This exhaustive, universe-wide demonstration ensures that when the new, perfected authority is finally established, the one shared with the adopted Son's creation will never choose rebellion again.
Because they've seen the ultimate cost of sin.
Exactly. They've seen the cost it leads to killing the Creator Himself. And they've seen the ultimate expression of the Father's love, the Son's willingness to enter that system and pay the price through perfect sacrifice. The lesson is learned, indelibly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you, the listener, to really chew on. A final thought provoked by this material. Consider this. If the Son, who's the Creator, the original owner of everything, still had to formally and legally earn the inheritance of the cosmos, if he had to do that by humbling himself, becoming a creature, and submitting to death on the cross, the very penalty demanded by the law he created, but which was broken by others. What does that tell you about the true nature of authority, power, and inheritance within this specific framework? Is ultimate eternal authority perhaps found not just in the power to command obedience, but maybe more profoundly in the act of perfect, sacrificial obedience that fulfills and validates the law itself, even at infinite cost?
That's a heavy question to ponder, something to definitely explore further as you process everything we've unpacked today.